So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town Council meeting for February 21st. If you'll please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I just do want to say, I didn't say it ahead of time, but we would like, as a town council, to acknowledge the loss to the Gentili family recently, and so our prayers are with all of them. Okay, so we're going to move on to public comment. This portion of the meeting is specifically set aside for comments from the public who are asked to limit their comments to 2 minutes. Any person interested in providing public comment should email publicmeetings@rockyhillct.gov and will be provided with a link to attend the Zoom remote meeting and instructions on how to participate. So is anyone here from the public who would like to participate? Thank you.
Hi, Lori Bosky, 18 Highland Street. I'm always told you should deposit before you withdraw, so let me make a deposit first. A compliment to the highway department and to whatever contractors were used to do the paving. I live on Highland Street, corner of Cold Spring Road, and I've been there for 30 years. And for 30 years, from November to April, that intersection always had water over it, always had ice. I'm sure the town crews know that you'd have to come and sand it, even when the weather was sunny. But they spent half the summer in my front yard, a big ditch, people up to their waist in dirt, trying to figure out what was going on, and it looks like they fixed it. Even though we haven't had the snow, we've had the rain, but that intersection has been dry, so I really do appreciate the work that they've done. The only thing I don't like are the people that cut through now and they go at an extra fast rate of speed because the road's so nice and smooth, but that's okay. Now, my withdrawal. Again, I am a member of the Fair Rent Commission, and I'm happy to see that you have an item on your agenda tonight dealing with concierge apartments. Just a quick comment of what Fair Rent Commission does. When Fair Rent Commission finds that rental housing does not meet the local or state health or safety requirements for housing, the Commission may suspend rent payments until the housing is brought into compliance. Now, if every person at concierge filed a complaint with the Fair Rent Commission, we'd never get it done. There would be hundreds of complaints. Right now, at 707, there is no hot water at a couple of the buildings in concierge. They had no hot water on Monday. They had no hot water on Friday. They keep getting messages that we're working on it. We apologize. People call. I've tried to call. I don't even live there. And you don't even get an answering machine anymore. Nobody picks up. So I really would urge the town to do something. These are residents of our town. I care about them, and we shouldn't be treating our people this way. So thank you.
Charlie Wisnowski, 670 Old Main Street. My 120 seconds will be supplemented by my wife's 120 seconds, and then Chicarella's 120 if I need them. I have some handouts after my oral comments. And having to be brief, it's hard to make sense. I'm going to provide you with a grid of the tax abatements for the Borden and Wethersfield, Bellefonte and Cromwell, and Bellefonte and Rocky Hill. I'm going to provide you with the Wethersfield tax abatement agreement minus the exhibits. I'm going to provide you with the Cromwell Economic Development Commission vote where the amount of abatement was reduced in the motion to approve. Yes, you can do that. I'm going to provide you with a response to the question, is a real estate tax abatement good for a town? I submitted that question to ChatGPT. I looked at the minutes of the town council meeting of January 17th, 2023, when several of you expressed that you're not giving up something that you do not have. And I'm not picking on anybody individually, but just the concept. So, I suggest that you, the town council, use the funds which may exist in the future to meet the goals adopted by the town of Rocky Hill in December of 2022. That is, a funding source for affordable housing as stated in your affordable housing plan. So next I'm going to read you 2 short paragraphs from the AI response about, is a real estate tax abatement good for the town? This is not my personal opinion. Tax abatements, and this is a section, there are other sections that are more positive to tax abatements. Tax abatements can also create inequities in the tax system, as some property owners or businesses may be given preferential treatment while others are not. This can lead to resentment and frustration among residents who feel that they are not receiving fair treatment from their local government. Therefore, while real estate tax abatements can be beneficial in certain circumstances, they should be carefully considered and implemented in a way that balances the potential benefits with the potential risks and negative effects on the town's finances and its residents. You are giving away too much in too long, absolutely, and relatively compared to Wethersfield and Cromwell. The grid that I will give to you shows how different Rocky Hill is from Wethersfield and Cromwell. Your non-receipt of taxes benefits high-income investors and high-income tenants to the burden on the existing real estate taxpayers living in Rocky Hill. Let us existing taxpayers keep our money and spend it in town as you claim the future residents may do. Abate the commercial, but not the residential. A small fraction of the deal you now have will attract developers like the conversion of the office building behind Wendy's restaurant presented to the P&Z last week. Change the proposed tax abatement deal. Please do better for existing taxpayers. Thank you. Share these, please.
Hello, I'm Gary Pope of 200 Cold Spring Roads in Rocky Hill, which is, as you guys may possibly know, Concierge Apartments. I'm one of the other people that's filing a complaint for that space. And just to give you guys some background of my upbringing and stuff, I've grown up in some of the weirdest places. I've grown up in places where literally my landlord was a Russian mobster, and I've had people, after I've heard gunshots, running to my place looking for my landlord, not to say, oh, we're looking for him to do harm or anything, but to look for him to help them out. I've been in situations where, no joke, I have nothing against sex workers at all, but I've lived next to prostitutes, and the problem I had to deal with them is not the prostitutes themselves, but the pimps that parked in my driveway, so I couldn't leave my own house to go to work in the next day. With all that being said, this is the worst place I've ever lived at, if that sums up pretty easily. I haven't had a lukewarm shower in 2 weeks. We've been having to go to a hotel. We actually are currently staying at a hotel tonight. This is the second time we've had to do this in the past 2 weeks. And that's not even going into the details of all of the other times we've had to deal with these sort of issues. It's no joke that the second that it hits beneath about 20 degrees, you're almost guaranteed to not have any cold water. It's also pretty normal. Actually, It's actually very normal on, even when the water is working, that anytime between 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. is very normal for that the water to be extremely hot, to the point where if you're going to go to the bathroom to poop, it literally is steaming your butt. I don't know how the hot water is getting to the cold water pipe, but that is how the situation is in our place. And not joking, our advice to actually deal with the situation was to take a shower, not take the shower, but turn on the hot water in the shower and let it run for about 45 minutes, which is literally draining all of the hot water in the entire building. And that is also not just for us, drain hot water for us, that is literally the entire hot water for the entire building. So we could take a lukewarm shower, then everyone else has to deal with barely having any hot water to deal with for that day. And that is a normal occurrence. Well, that means normal. That means literally every single day. We've been living there for about 5 months now at this point, and this has been a problem since day one. This has not been a recent, because it's been super cold issue. This has been day one. We've been dealing with all of these problems. It's also totally normal that if you are actually paying extra to have your car parked underneath the garage where you're actually supposed to have your car protected, that's totally normal for that the pipes to then suddenly burst and all of a sudden water falls onto your car in freezing weather, and then it damages your car and is broken, and you're paying extra for that. So with that being said, I think I've kind of made it pretty clear in almost about 3 minutes now how ridiculous concierge apartments is, and it's just from someone who's been living there for 5 months and how ridiculous it is. So hopefully you guys actually look into this and do something about it. But thank you for your time.
All right, nervous smile, so this is just kind of my thing. My name is Stella Nochi, also 200 Cold Spring Road, apartment B108, concierge apartments. We sold our house in October. So in advance of selling the house, we needed to get the kids into a better school system. My oldest was recently diagnosed with autism, and so we've heard a lot of good things about the schools in Rocky Hill, and so we moved over. We wanted to get them set up before the school started, so we chose concierge apartments. Again, I'm an English teacher, I'm an academic dean of humanities, and so I read. So I read all of the Google reviews, and I asked them directly when we were looking at the property, talk to me about the reviews. I found hardly any positive reviews, what's going on. I was told to my face that they're under new management. All of the reviews that I read were due to previous management, therefore I will not anticipate experiencing some of the things that were complained about. They took us on a tour through the back of the property. We didn't enter through the lobby, and I wish that we did. If we had entered through the lobby, we would have seen that there were buckets, big plastic tubs that were there to catch the leaks, the water that was falling from the roof of the lobby in Building 200. If we had gone through the front, we would have seen the damage of the graffiti of people who were able to get into the building, because that was before the electric locks that just happened to be put up this month. If we went through the front, we probably would have ran into other residents, to which I would have asked them, what is your experience here? And I would have gotten the information I needed. I am feeling very betrayed by Rocky Hill, because when I looked at the document that was posted in the Facebook group and the Facebook post today that has the history of how the town is suing concierge, none of that information was made available to residents who are still moving in to concierge. People are being held legally responsible for living in a, excuse my language, kids, a shithole. It's a hellhole, because the town of Rocky Hill, I don't know what the legal ramifications are, but at least making it clear what people were getting into is probably the cheapest thing that people could do now. My family and I are stuck in a lease that concierge completely messed up. They put us under a 15-month when we were only supposed to be a 12-month. No matter what we've said, they haven't changed it. So we're going to be stuck. If we leave due to our actual 12-month lease end date, which was going to be sometime in August or September, we will forfeit our security deposit. I brought the kids to Rocky Hill so that they would have better schooling opportunities afforded to them. As an educator, that is the utmost, that is my responsibility as a parent. And I have to explain to them, this is how we boil water on the stove for your bath. My family comes from Nigeria. I had to do that in Nigeria because corruption demanded that's the only way that we survived. I did not expect to meet that same level of corruption in Rocky Hill, where I have to take the kids to the hotel and then deal with them the night when we're leaving. Why can't we live here, Mommy? They would rather live in the hotel than go back to our apartment. It doesn't matter if they're getting a good education. It matters instead that they have to learn how to take a shower using a baby wipe and some rubbing alcohol or hand sanitizer. Rocky Hill, knowing how many years this has been going on, it had a responsibility to at least warn people what they were going to be getting into. I've had to tell that to neighbors, like, get out, you just moved in yesterday, nice to meet you, my name is Stella, you should leave. That is not my responsibility, and now we're stuck. So I'm hoping that with whatever moves forward in terms of communication with current tenants, we'll find a way to assist the current tenants there. I went over my time, sorry. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jason Barco, 200 Cold Spring Road. I had no intentions on speaking today, and I don't know what I could say to expound on what they've already told you. I came here and I filed a Fair Rent Commission case, which I won. Concierge then sends me an NDA saying that in order for you to get your settlement, you must sign this NDA. Within the NDA, it says that they refute everything that I've claimed, that everything that I said was false, fabricated, made up, a lie. They said that in order for me to get the settlement that I won during my Fair Rent Commission hearing, that I had to sign this NDA. I sent it right back. I told them I'm not going to sign it. You heard everything from the graffiti to lack of hot water. I have to go to work. I have to go to work to take a shower. I'm fortunate enough that where I work for the fire department, I could go there whenever I want. We haven't had water since Thursday. Within the past 3 months, I've had to call them 15 times for this same exact issue. No heat, no hot water. I said, are you guys going to put us up in a hotel? No. As long as we're providing heat and cold water, we're not going to relocate you. All right, that's cool. Are you going to notify the rest of the residents that we have no hot water? Well, if they're interested, they'll call. Well, we do call. Nobody picks up. We can't get through to the message line, nothing. I have to call Rocky Hill Police Department. Like I said, I work for the fire department, so I know which steps I have to take to get people involved. Normal residents don't know to call the police department. They don't know that. So instead of speaking on the hot water issue, I want to speak to health and safety and fire hazards. Concierge, in an attempt to keep the pipes from freezing, they run extension cords with space heaters, and they put them in the drop ceiling, where there's insulation. Not only that, they fuse the safety switch on the bottom. When the electric heaters get tipped over, they're automatically supposed to turn off. They fuse them to keep them on in an attempt to prevent the pipes from freezing. This is just one of the many issues that has happened there. This gentleman right here stated that we pay to park our cars. Absolutely, 100%. I'm one of those people. The ceiling fell on my vehicle. I brought that to concierge, said, hey, your ceiling fell on my vehicle. Yeah, go through your insurance company. It'll be taken care of. That's not how it works. If my vehicle runs into this property, you go through my insurance. Your ceiling fell on my car. Yeah, we're not going to pay for it. Go through your insurance. I don't know what to do at this point. I'm pretty sure Melissa is tired of hearing from me. I call, I email. I'm here almost every single day. I practically work here. I'm here that much. They know me on a first-name basis. They should not. Concierge management gets turned around every 2 days. Today, they asked me who the property manager. I said, I don't know. I just met her 2 days ago. I went in there asking for Charlene. We don't know where she is. Have no idea. I'm to the point now that I stand outside of the parking lot for new tenants. You don't want to move here. You really don't. I wish that they do take people through the front. People will hightail it out of there. What they do is they take you through the back, where it's nice, where it's pretty, where it's all decorated. You don't see the true concierge. So I'm here, I'm imploring, I don't know what you guys have the authority to do. I'm imploring you, please do something. Because the residents, we're fed up and we're forgotten. 4 days without hot water, and I'm told, kick rocks. As of right now, the hot water's still not on, and that's been that way since Thursday. The coldest temperatures of the year, we had no hot water, no heat. Correction, we had no water, no heat. I was fortunate enough that the town came in and they dropped cases of water off for us. Other than that, I don't know what to do. I don't have children. They have children. We're fed up. We're tired. JRK, they're out in California. They're collecting their money and laughing. I'm pretty sure I went over my time. I don't even know how much time I had, but again, I implore you, please, we need something to be done about concierge. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Shock you all, I'm another resident of Concierge. I appreciate what you said about not being able to add much to what other folks have already said. Unfortunately, I can add a lot. There's glass all over the parking lots. There is racial slurs written in many of the hallways that they dealt with by spray painting it. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I live in Rocky Hill and I work in Tolland, and I have 2 young boys. My boys are walking through the hallways of my residence where every single month I click the button to pay $2,100 for a 2-bedroom apartment that is not safe, that is a literal death trap for my children and myself. But I have no choice but to continue living there. There are, the water issue in itself is a problem, but also, since you guys spoke a lot to the structural and building stuff, I'll speak to the financial aspects. JRK are criminals. They are straight up criminals. They own hundreds of properties across the US. They are unreachable. I've called their representatives. I've called their service line. They installed on our website where we pay our rent customer relations, where I pointed out to them that I pay a water bill every month, which is actually illegal in the state of Connecticut unless it's written into your lease, which, surprise, surprise, they wrote it in there. It was a 35-page lease that we signed. Which, okay, I can pay my water bill, no problem. Until I'm walking through my parking lot and there's Niagara Falls coming down into the parking lot. I have shared my dozens of photos, videos, and pictures with DPH, Jasmine at DPH, and a lot of the issues, she says, are out of their hands. They can deal with the public health issues, but things like water are not being dealt with. When I'm paying $300 a month in water bills at an apartment, when I had a house in Glastonbury that had 1 more bedroom and 1 more bathroom, and I was paying a third of that, I can almost guarantee that none of you pay $300 a month in water. I can guarantee that. So I'm watching my bank account drain in the form of water onto the ground, and they don't do anything about it. I was told last April that they were going to investigate that and reimburse us for some of that cost. I keep paying my rent every month. I pay that water bill. That's ridiculous every month. And my kids have to walk through buildings with broken glass, broken windows, racial slurs that they're then repeating at school, and I'm having to deal with that with the school system that they're in. It is embarrassing. It is unacceptable, and that place is a death trap. And if something is not done immediately, people are going to end up being hurt. There was people going through the buildings. The graffiti came from disgruntled residents. And I talked to management. I knew Charlene from before I moved in. Just like these folks over here, I talked to them. I said, I've seen the reviews. I'm not an idiot. I'm well educated. I'm not moving into a place where my kids are not going to be safe. And they guaranteed me, showed me. They don't even show the residents what apartment they're moving into before they move into it. They show you a model apartment, and then they put you in whatever unit they decide is fit for you. I knew that, so I made them show me my apartment unit before I moved in. They fought me on it. I had to see 3 different apartments before I found one that was adequately in repair. The place is dilapidated. It should be condemned, honestly. And I understand that none of you are responsible for JRK or what's going on over there individually or even as a town council. And I appreciate a lot that the town is suing them, but what about us residents who every day still have to go home to that? What about us residents who I had to go to a friend's house 2 towns away, cancel 2 clients of mine this morning to take a shower because I still don't have hot water. I didn't have hot water on Christmas Eve morning. I didn't have hot water beginning of the month of December. I didn't have hot water or any water in the month of November. I've filed a complaint every single time to get no response from them. It's unacceptable. It's inhumane. So I appreciate you guys' time. I hope that something can come from the lawsuit from the town. And if there's any way that anybody has any information about filing more lawsuits, because I'm ready to go class action on JRK. Straight up. My heart breaks for the people who don't have the privilege that I do to take the time out of their workday to make these phone calls to all of these town departments that can't really do anything. Their hands are tied. But I at least have the ability to take time off to make those calls. What about the hundreds of residents that don't? They can't afford to take a day off to sit on hold or have Jasmine come down from DPH to inspect their apartment. They don't have that benefit. Those are the people that they're preying on. And I guarantee you, if they're doing it here, they're doing it other places. So again, I appreciate your time. I apologize for my, I don't apologize for my passion, actually. I own my passion and ferocity about this because somebody needs to do something. And us as residents, we can't do this alone. We need the backing of the town in whatever that looks like.
So before you back away from the microphone, you just need to state your name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Julian Finnegan, 200 Cold Spring Road, 307B. These are my neighbors.
Thank you, Julian. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to close public comment. And just, we don't typically have folks coming in unless they're angry. So I want to tell you, since I know you're newcomers, that the council does not engage in conversation and we will not comment on what you said. But it is important that you came and we appreciate that. And that's the most that I'm able to say to you. But we will certainly follow up. And I would encourage you to stay and listen to the town's report and listen to Attorney Boria's report. Okay, so I'm going to close public comment.
Madam Mayor, with the closing of public comment, I'd like to move new business item A, update Town of Rocky Hill versus Century Hills Property Owner LLC, up now after public comment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So welcome, Attorney Boria.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. I have to say that I wasn't surprised to hear those comments. I've made some prepared remarks, and then I'm going to address the comments afterwards. Under ordinary circumstances, I would not be here to specifically comment on pending litigation matters. That's not typically what we do. We try cases in court, not in the public. So we would not typically do that. However, this is not ordinary circumstances tonight. And I could tell, and I've known that for probably the last few weeks since I personally got involved in this. Century Hills Complex is the biggest apartment complex in town, and the amount of complaints and enforcement activity that's been generated makes this property an outlier compared to other rental properties in town. So when we look at the other properties in town and we look at the Century Hills property, we see that the amount of complaints, the fair rent complaints that are made, they are significant, and there's no other rental property in town that comes close to the amount of activity that we've had to engage in with these folks. We had an incident, as I've been mentioned now, this week. I got a call from Dana Evans, and Melissa Hicks, our social services director, had some residents come in because they didn't have sufficient water. And that's something that we're pretty aware of. We were aware of it before, and we've raised the issue previously, but it's happened again. So because of all these things happening, we understand that the public has an interest in understanding what we're doing to address the problems that the tenants have and the complaints at the property. And I want to just start by saying that one of the reasons that I think we've gotten to this point is that typically, as I said, this is an outlier. So most of our enforcement folks, who I've talked to quite a bit about this, their normal way of handling these problems is voluntary cooperation. When our fire marshal goes in and gives a citation, what usually happens is the people fix it. They don't have to have it followed up. They don't have to pay a fine because they cooperate. When our building official goes in and says there's a problem, the people fix it. So that has been the way that we typically operate our enforcement activity, is voluntary cooperation, and we are very fortunate that in Rocky Hill, the vast majority of property owners are responsible and responsive. And this has been a successful strategy because it allows us to have voluntary cooperation and not waste a lot of time and money on enforcement activities. Unfortunately, that approach has had very limited success at the Concierge property. And my predecessor council filed a lawsuit to ensure that the owner complies with the town's building code, housing code, and zoning regulations. But the people who live at Century Hills obviously continue to have the problems and the complaints, and the condition of the property has not improved sufficiently. I am aware of the heat and water issues. This is something that has been raised since I got involved in this about a month ago, that we've had numerous instances of this problem. So because of the amount of activity that's been generated there and the town's frustration with handling all the complaints, I was asked to get involved in this case. And I'm a trial lawyer. I don't settle cases. Typically, I try them. People come to me because they want to win, not settle. That's why they come to me. So that's why I was asked to get involved in this directly. And so what I did was, in order to prepare to have a meeting with the owners, I interviewed town staff for 2 days. And we determined the extent of the problems and the reasons for the problems. And the vast majority of the problems are due to a lack of ongoing maintenance. What happens is, if you defer maintenance over and over again over a period of years, when the time comes to deal with all these issues, you have a cascading effect, and it's almost impossible, and the expense becomes extreme. So what we did was we met with the town officials, and we reviewed the various citations and violations, as well as other complaints that we had received. And I met with Melissa, and I met with Rich Renstrom, and I met with the building and zoning, et cetera. As a result of that, we had prepared for this meeting. What we did was we drafted a plan as to how this could be dealt with. So first we sent them a report, and the town manager has copies of this. We sent them a report that reviewed the various issues. And so you've heard about the water and the heat, and there's a lot more. The space heater issues. They had an incident with the fobs, the electric fobs, where people could not actually get out of the building because the thing's locked in. And one of our guys had to actually break their way out of a building. There's a lot of other issues. I'm not going to just go through the whole laundry list, but there are a lot more than you heard about tonight. And because of that, we've taken a very aggressive approach with them, and they are aware of the fact that we intend to, we're going to litigate this thing to conclusion if we have to, and they're well aware of that. They have changed counsel also. They've now hired Robinson & Cole as their counsel, which is a very reputable firm, and the level of representation, at least from my point of view and their cooperation, has been very good so far. So let me just go back and backtrack as to what happened. After doing the interviews and preparing a summary of the various issues, fact intensive, we then prepared a list of remedial actions. There's 9 different actions of remedial actions for them to take. And then when we met with them, this global approach, I think, it let them have information that the management in California may not have been completely aware of, because there's a huge communication problem at this facility. They constantly turn over managers. Not having a reliable and consistent point of contact has been a problem the entire time. And so we met with the owners and the management personnel on February 9th. We had people come to the town hall, and we also had a Zoom. So we had the general counsel of the company, we had the deputy general counsel, we had their operations manager on Zoom, we had their Northeast regional manager here in person, and we had a pair of lawyers from Robinson & Cole representing them. At the end of the meeting, we had agreed that we would exchange plans to remedy the various issues. And so we sent our proposal out last Friday on February 17th, and we were waiting for their response. I talked to Evan Seaman today. He represents them from Robinson & Cole. They're going to be meeting with their client, and I've been assured that we'll have a response for Friday as to what they propose on the action plan that we had suggested to them. The other thing that they have indicated that they will give me on Friday, and I told them we can't have our citizens coming to the town hall to complain. We don't own the property. You do. You need to be responsive. We need contact information. We need phone numbers, and we need emails. And I've been assured that on Friday we will have that so that anybody who has to make a complaint, et cetera, will be able to reach the owners. That was a representation that was made to me point blank by the lawyers from Robinson and Cole. And my experience with them is that they are reliable attorneys. And I would expect from their point of view that they're going to honor their representations.
How are you going to get that info out?
As soon as I get it, one of the first people I would do is give it to Melissa, because I think she's the one who has the greatest amount of interaction. And then we were going to post we'll probably post some type of an announcement on the town website. I know a lot of it could just be public relations, but the reaction from the company at the time when we met and from the attorneys was that they thought that we made a lot of progress in the meeting and that there were a lot of issues that they claimed that they were just not aware of, in particular the general counsel who I was on the phone with. And I think that they're probably going to take these issues much more seriously because a lot of these issues do impact health and safety, and they have insurance at that facility. And their underwriters and adjusters, when this information becomes they become aware of it, are going to force them to deal with it, or they're going to raise their premiums so high that it will not make financial sense for them not to deal with it. So perhaps one of the reasons why this has happened is that, for whatever reason, I'm not aware of any of the residents really hiring counsel to bring actions themselves. And with all due respect, my experience is if you want to get something done, you hire a lawyer and they get something done. In particular, in a case like this, where you may have a potential bait and switch tactics, all right, that's an unfair trade practice. If you are guilty of that, you will pay the other side's attorney's fees. When you have a situation where you don't have heat and hot water, you may have consumer protection issues. And you can undo your lease and you can get paid to relocate. Now, these are all things that the tenants would have individual rights for and individual causes of action. So one of the things that we have done is that we have talked to private counsel in Rocky Hill that's willing to take on a class action in this matter, willing to represent individuals, and I have instructed Melissa that she is aware that we are more than comfortable to provide this referral information to people who have problems. And so not only is the town going to take action with regard to the lawsuit and the meetings that we're having, but we've also attempted to provide resources for individuals who may have problems like we've heard about tonight that may be faster and more effective than for us to have this global resolution, which is going to take time, unfortunately. So, and I had asked, they didn't show up tonight, I asked them to come tonight. I asked the lawyer and I asked the company to come tonight, and they are obviously not here, and I don't want that to reflect badly on the lawyers, because, he didn't get a lot of notice, only a couple of days. Actually, I told him last Friday. But I would have thought that the company would have wanted to be here, or at least that they're going to have to respond. I understand they're going to be on site tomorrow. So at this point, we have a hearing in April. And so I anticipate that we're going to have an agreement in place well before then. In my view, and I've litigated a lot of cases, I tried a case for South Windsor where we had exact same thing, zoning problem, horrible issue. Not only did I get a substantial monetary judgment, the court awarded $52,000 in attorney's fees on top of it. Case took 5 years. Got appealed to the Supreme Court. Ended up in federal court. So yeah, I'll try them. We'll win. 5 years. So my advice is that the most reasonable path to resolution is an agreement. And litigation is going to be long and costly, and it's going to make nobody happy but the lawyers. And it won't make me very happy either, because I've been representing town for a long time, and I know that no one is going to be satisfied with that. But I have delivered the message to RNC, to Robinson and Cole, to their lawyers. They know me. They know why the town asked me to get involved. If they don't do what they need to do, we will try the case, they will pay, they will lose. Unfortunately, I can't have a trial tomorrow. So we're working on it, and I think the message has been delivered. The lawyers that they have, I said, are reputable. They're going to have to work on their clients. They have to get their clients to respond, and if they don't, then we're going to do what needs to be done, and I will do it. These issues started in 2016. This isn't something new. They have continued to the present, and that's why this is piled up. I say 2016 because that is when the Fair Rent Commission complaints started. And of all the towns, of all the other properties, the only property that's had all these complaints is this property. I'm not aware of any other property in town that's had a Fair Rent Commission hearing besides the Century Hills property since 2016. And as I said, it's going to take time and it's going to take money to fix it. So when I met with the owners, one of my real asks was, I want to know how much money you're going to allocate to do this. I want a number. I want to know how much money. Okay, we did not get a number, but I was told that since they've bought the property, they've spent millions of dollars on that property. That's the claim that they've made. Now, obviously, when you're in court and you do discovery, you will find out whether or not it's true or not. Okay, but that was a representation that was made. And it appears to me that one of the really huge issues, well, we went over, we've already heard, there's complaints with regard to inadequate heat or no heat, inadequate or no water. They did unpermitted work without inspections. We've got about 40 open permits that have not been closed that we have notified them of. And so right now, the first thing we're going to do is determine the status of those permits and then do final inspections for the ones that can be done. And the ones that can't be done, they're going to have to hire licensed contractors and finish the work so we can inspect. There's mold and general maintenance issues. On the mold, what we're doing is we are forwarding them air sampling tests results and from some of the residents. So once they receive those, once again, they're going to have to put their carrier on notice with that one. And so that kind of activity, as much as the town, we can take enforcement action, et cetera, but my experience is when the carrier comes in and starts looking at this and says, you're going to have a problem here, you got to do this, that is another way to get them to be responsive. So what we're trying to do is not only have the town enforcement action, try to have an agreement, try to refer to another lawyer who's said that he will accept these cases and has experience doing class actions, and also putting the pressure on by suggesting that people notify the landlord that there's a mold issue, we're going to make a claim. And you have medical payments coverage for the property. Because medical payments coverage is if you get hurt there, they have to pay it regardless of fault. So if you have a medical bill, if they have medical payments coverage, they'd have to pay it regardless of fault. Once again, the carrier will then be on notice, and once again, we'll have a reason to come in and take a look. So I think that right now, we have done, at this point, we've set the table as much as we can. I anticipate having outline of an agreement by Friday. We've already sent them the corrective actions that we want to see happen. And those include, number one, an open line of communication, not only for town officials, because we've had the same problem as the residents. I've got, town officials, enforcement officials are going to the property and they can't find anybody either. These are our enforcement folks. They got uniforms on and they can't find anybody. So obviously, this is a huge problem, is the communication contact problem. So that's the first thing that we really want to make sure, that there's somebody there on site that can deal with the complaints. And as I said, I told them that the town is not the proper first party to get complaints. The proper first party to get complaints is the owner. That's the landlord. But we agreed, and the lawyers for Robinson and Cole and the general counsel for the company, and when lawyers talk, we tend to try to say the right thing, hopefully. But we agreed that we're going to fix these problems together, cooperating with our officials. So we're setting up inspections for the building department right now. We're actually going to have an inspection, I think, on the 27th for the lights, on the emergency lighting in the hallways and stuff. We do know that there are issues with regard to smoke detectors, fire doors. I mean, we are aware of the issues. We have asked, and we've actually given citations for these things. The citation procedure, as you know, the local citation procedure is relatively, it's time consuming, and then you have an appeal to the Superior Court. So once again, to my mind, if we can have, my ideal solution here would be for us to reach an agreement and enter it as a stipulated judgment in the court so that the court would have continuing jurisdiction and can enforce it and use its contempt powers if, in fact, there were violations of the agreement. I don't know that they will be able to put all that together and have it go to the court, but that would be my preference as opposed to just a signed settlement agreement, which is really a contract, and then you have to file a lawsuit separately as a breach of contract if they don't honor it. So our plan would be to try to have an agreement and then have a stipulated judgment. Yeah, and there's definitely been a high turnover at the facility. That was acknowledged. I mean, at this point, there's going to be no claim that they're not aware of the problems, that they haven't been put on notice. The only other few things I would say is that we actually did get some more information tonight. The information with regard to the heaters, fusing the bottom of the heaters, was new information. Appreciate that. I think that one of the things that's happened here is now that we have a central point of contact, which is our firm, as well as we've created a drive for all the complaints to go in. So there's one place. I know that we're going to have some announcements with regard to what the town's doing and to the situation there. So I think that I don't know the entire history of it to get to this point. I think one of the things that occurred here was that they took advantage of some of our officials, some of our enforcement officials, that they made promises and representations that they did not keep, and that our folks are not used to dealing with property owners that act that way. Because most of our owners in town, as I said, our experience is they're responsible and they voluntarily cooperate. So I think they somewhat did take advantage, and they've also, from what I can now determine, may have made, direct misrepresentations about work that was done, which we are now demanding proof of the work being done. So I understand that there's frustration. I really feel bad for you guys. I really do. I understand that there's frustration. We're going to do everything we can right now to get an agreement as quickly as possible. And now there are other resources. I'm sure Melissa will be more than happy to share the names of the private attorneys, the one in particular, who would be willing to take a look at this. And there may be other actions that we can take, even though I'm somewhat reluctant to. I think that the best thing to do is to try to resolve this now and get it done, so that we can take care of this as fast as possible. What we did was we gave them a priority list of the repairs that have to be done. So the top repairs are all the ones that go to safety. The safety issues are the top thing that we have to have done. The water is a huge issue. Our fire department actually brings water because we don't trust the water at the facility. So when our fire department shows up, we bring water. So it's a huge issue. The heat's an issue. More than I'm familiar with the space heater issue. We have advised them that they cannot do that, that that's a fire hazard, safety hazard. We have put them on notice with regard to all these problems. I mean, I really don't want to get into some of the details because there's some things that they might not be completely aware of, and I don't really want to say it in public. And that's one of the reasons why we don't typically comment on pending litigation. is because there may be things that we plan on doing if they don't cooperate that I don't want to tell you tonight, so they will not be prepared for them. But I will tell you that we have looked at, so in addition to the bait and switch, potentially, unfair trade practices, there's also under the consumer protection laws, when landlords don't provide heat and hot water, there are remedies, and we do have a consumer protection department also here. So if it's a state agency, so there may be other resources that would be available too. And I'm going to talk to Melissa further and to give her all the information that she might need. In fact, I think, Melissa, you're the one that came up with the consumer protection statute, right? I think so. So, right, with the fire marshal. So, I mean, basically what happened was, I don't like to use that word, but once we got everybody together over the course of 2 days, and one after the other, and I was able to get records and talk to everybody, I was able to put together a global picture of what's going on there. So once we met with them, they really couldn't say anything that we weren't ready for, other than when they told me that they spent X amount of dollars. I mean, I couldn't say yes or no. I just couldn't tell them one way or the other. And there were the meeting got a little contentious at the beginning, but by the end of it, I think they got the message that the best thing to do is cooperate with us. And I also told them that I thought their reputation, if they cared at all about their reputation, that, I didn't understand how they could allow this to go on. And, I don't know, shame doesn't seem to work that much anymore like it used to, but the general counsel certainly seemed upset by those comments. And when I asked him to give me a number, he said, we spent $5 million already. So I don't know if that's true, but that's where we are. And I wish I had already solved the problem when I came down tonight, but it's going to take a little bit more time. I will have better answers, more definitive answers on Friday. And the only other thing I would say is I feel really bad on you guys of going there and then asking them point blank about the situation and then still moving in. So I would say talk to Melissa about the private counsel, because the town is only going to be able to do so much, and our enforcement is going to be at a certain point. And it sounds to me as if there may be issues that go way beyond that, and you'd be well served. And I think that the attorney that I've talked to, I'm sure that he would be seeing you originally just to see if you have a case or not. You wouldn't have to worry, if you could afford it or not, until after he determines whether or not you have a case, and then you guys could work things out. And once, I think, when they get hit from all these different sides of it, not just us, that we'll get as good a response as we're going to get. And that's why we end up trying cases, because sometimes no matter what you do, and people make representations, and you want to believe them, sometimes you have to try the case, which, as I said from the very beginning, I'm more than happy to do, even though I don't want to. I think it would be a waste of time and money, but we can't allow them to continue to operate this way. So either they're going to begin to operate in a proper fashion, or they're going to end up in court and they're going to lose. So anybody have any questions? I'm almost afraid to say that, but I'm going to ask. And I see my brother counsel has a question.
Thank you for the update. So I see from the docket that the case is scheduled for trial for this coming May 25th.
We have a status conference in April.
That's the nature of the proceeding in April, is a status conference? Well,
that's my understanding.
Well, there's three things. There's three matters on the docket. There's the trial on May 25th. There's a trial management conference on May 11th. And then it says there's a hearing on April 5th. So what's the nature of that hearing?
That's the status conference. They're calling it a hearing, but it's really a status conference, from what I understand from talking to Attorney Seaman.
Okay.
Because I was not, I wasn't counsel. I think it was a prior firm, actually, when originally had that set up. But I don't think that, I don't think it's anything more than a status conference. If it's more than that, we'll determine what it is, but I anticipate having an agreement well before then.
So in your mind, is that May 25th trial date a firm date?
Right now, it's a firm date.
Has the other side talked about seeking continuance?
They have not talked about seeking a trial continuance.
Okay. Is discovery complete?
Discovery's not complete. We got hit with a tremendous amount of discovery in, what was it, in January? They filed discovery in January.
Last month?
December, yeah. The defendants did. And so we still have time to answer. We filed objections to a great deal of it, and we still have time to answer it. 60 days to answer. So they filed it, I think it was in December.
Wasn't there a scheduling order?
I'm not aware of any scheduling orders.
So if they just dropped a pile of discovery on you in January with a March date.
Right.
But even with that pile of discovery and needing to reply in March, the May 25th trial date is still firm.
At this time, there's been no continuances, and I don't really see that we would need that much to try the case. It would be up to them to move for continuance, we would oppose it. They filed the discovery late. We are compiling answers. I mean, we have a good part of the town staff had been compiling answers. We have put it on pause now to try to settle the case. If we're not able to, we'll just pick it back up again.
So,
I mean, I've tried 2-3 week cases with 2 weeks of prep.
and I know I can't get into too much of the nitty-gritty of settlement discussions, but from what you've told us, a lot of the focus has been on improving lines of communication, being sure that people are available, that the tenants have phone numbers and email addresses, that sort of thing. But as far as the main substantive issues we heard about tonight, specifically heat and water, are those specific agenda items front and center in these settlement discussions about them making real infrastructure investments to correct those issues?
Yes, there are. They are. Those were top issues. All the safety issues, heat and water, those were the top issues. I mean, I have the, if you look at the memo, which I had sent to the manager, but if you take a look at the memo that we put together for the agenda, the safety issues were use of space heaters, inadequate heat, lack of water service, mold, squatters, cannabis parties in the stairwells. 90% of alarms are false. Failure to maintain elevators. So we actually have had a very frank discussion with regard to all those. And so, and our remedial actions were to close all the permits, a list of all the smoke detectors installed with identifying numbers. We have an issue with regard to the doors. We have an issue with regard, as I said, to the water and to the heat, and all of those are maintenance renovation schedule. So what we wanted them to do was tell us how long is it going to take. We want a schedule, we want the items prioritized. So when we came back to them now, we told them how we wanted them prioritized and how they're going to respond to us. So once we get the response, and as I anticipate having it by Friday, then we'll have an idea if we're going to be able to resolve this or not. I mean, if we can't resolve it, we'll just go at them. I'm not concerned with that. My major concern is getting them to do this voluntarily. I mean, trying the case is easy. Having them reach an agreement and getting this done quick, that's the hard part.
Well, what kind of relief can the court grant let me finish. If you go to trial, and I didn't, the complaint is fairly bare bones. I know it's your predecessor counsel.
I didn't draft it.
I know. But and again, these are not areas of the law that I deal with. Would the court have jurisdiction, given the claims at issue here, to order the type of physical infrastructure improvements that we're talking about for water and heat and the like?
Well,
is that a potential outcome of a judgment?
There are claims for injunctive relief. So if the court entered that as injunctive relief, then it could be a potential remedy. But I don't know that the court's going to enter that. One of the problems that we had, I mean, I'm not going to get into the legal issue. I'm not going to get into the legal issue that I'm facing with regard to that. There's a legal issue, and that's something for court. I'm not going to.
No, I understand that. I'm not looking
public on it.
Or I'm just asking if it's within the court's jurisdiction. If those type of remedies are in play in this litigation to compel the sort of things that you're talking about trying to get by way of settlement.
There may be an issue, but I'm not going to go further than that. It has to do with the enforcement, et cetera.
Okay.
But I don't think that it's not a legal issue that I'm going to discuss in public.
No, I understand that. I don't want to get into strategy, but I just want to know if it's as the complaint is framed under the theories that have been
Okay,
pled.
I think he asked and answered the question, Counselor.
Well,
Thank you.
Yes, sort of.
Well, but we're going to move on because he just said he's not going to answer it any further. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, first, of course, thank you for everybody who came out and shared your stories. We'll try not to editorialize. I'm sure they kind of spoke for themselves how affecting they are, and the council can only comment at certain levels because we have pending litigation, and we don't want to give any sort of impression of bias. One of the things that there's two tracks. There's long-term, the remedies that need to be made to resolve the infrastructure problems. And then in the short term, there are the tenants who have been living there, who are living there now, who have leases, who probably are not going to be there, or who may decide to not be there when those items are fixed. One of my immediate concerns is that when I hear things like issues with smoke detectors, fire doors, locks, modified space heaters that are, in the ceiling from professional firefighters, that implies risk of, potential large incident that may happen on a timetable different than our pending litigation. Is there a threshold that our public safety staff is keeping an eye on that we might want to get in front of those items? And, I don't know what the term is, but pull the COA.
So that's something that we have considered. And so when you are dealing with these types of situations, you have got various levels of response. So I would call that the nuclear option. And so what I've done is I've drafted, and I think the town already has something in place, but not what we've just submitted, and we're going to have to take a look at it. A Uniform Relocation Act plan. So we drafted a plan for the town as well as the forms, the applications. And so as you may know, if a tenant has to be relocated from an apartment because of safety issues, under the Uniform Relocation Act, the landlord has a responsibility first to relocate them. If the landlord does not do that, then the town can do that and then lien the property to get its money back from the landlord. And so that's what we have put together. And I think we need to take a look and see if I'm going to need official action from the council to adopt the plan. We may. I'd send it, I think we got it a couple of weeks ago. I went over to Dana and Melissa. So that was, if we take and we empty out 3 buildings and we put them up, it's going to be a logistical nightmare and expense. But once again, if we have to do it, we will. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. And so hopefully they got that message when I met with them. Mm-hmm. And I think they did. And we had some real, they made some representations that things had been done with regard to the fire safety issues that our people told them had not been done point blank during the conversations. So we are looking to get evidence that they did what they claimed that they did. And if they did, that would be good. But if they didn't, that's going to be a problem for us. So we're going to, a lot of this is fluid to an extent. I don't know, I haven't dealt with, the people I dealt with are all the same people because I've only started talking to them a few weeks ago. So my experience, and they brought a guy in named Chance, I forgot his last name, but he's now the new regional guy, and he seemed to be like a responsible and ambitious young man who wants to move ahead and probably wants to do a good job here from what I could tell. And he said, take a chance on me. His name is Chance, so it was kind of a joke, but bad joke. But he seemed like, and I got his number, et cetera, to get a hold of him. I don't want people, he's not in Connecticut, so I don't really want to use them as the contact. I want somebody on site.
Well, I mean, with respect to them and their response, I would think that might be something that the conditions as they exist with the judgment of our fire marshals and emergency staff would hopefully make an informed decision that gets out in front of a potential disaster. The other question I had, and
I'm with you on that. I mean, I'm 100% with you on that.
Is it possible, because I think it goes to your question before you ask your next question. Is it possible that the remedies that you're seeking through the Fair Rent Commission could possibly, I don't know if Melissa wants to speak to it, but I know that you are looking at options through the Fair Rent Commission. Is it possible that some of that strategy would allow us to sort of address what Councilor Duff is saying without having to go nuclear.
I'm gonna yield.
Default.
Did that make sense?
I'll ask you to clarify in a second. So
Yeah.
let me just go back from my perspective real quick. I know that we're spending a lot of time, but I think it's really important from my perspective to reiterate again. We've all acknowledged that people showed up, residents showed up. But on behalf of all of us here in town, I really think it's important that we all as a town acknowledge the manpower and the hours. And I think that we're sitting here talking about mold and we're talking about all of these things that are very real. But on behalf of the residents and town staff, we are not equipped in a 14 square mile, 21,000 population to contend with. We don't have full-time staff that's dedicated to just this area. And I can tell you and that extends to the volunteers, the fire department, the man hours, the police department, all of us who have spent countless holidays, weekends, and we're happy to do it. But more importantly for me, on behalf of the community and everybody involved, these are residents' homes. So we can talk till we're blue in the face about the black and white, but these are people's homes, their community. This is where they come back from work and decompress, and their children, they want to be safe. So all of the things that have been mentioned are absolutely accurate. And it goes on and on and on, but feces, dog feces in the hallways and all over the yards, their kids can't play there. And so many of the residents here tonight have emailed me, we've been in contact. And I just want to reiterate that we are all of us working very hard and recognize this. But I want to make sure that you recognize that this is your safe place and this is your home. And as a resident of Rocky Hill, and we take that, as a community, we take that very seriously. And take a lot of pride in this town. And so I just want to make sure that that message is heard, that everybody from the town manager down spends countless hours every day, all day. I can tell you fire marshal's office, my office, legal compliance, our town attorney, all of us today inundated for at least 6.5 to 7 hours today just on the concierge, coming in off a long weekend. That was with communication throughout the weekend. And probably the second or third weekend in a row, because the deputy mayor was certainly out with us. So that being said, we are working for the Fair Rent Commission to sort of come up with a new plan to condense, to organize it, because exactly what we sort of didn't realize would happen, but it ramped up, right? So everybody was coming and filing complaints, and we were coming at night, and the evidence was so overwhelming that it became sort of this battle back and forth, trying to look at pictures and come up with evidence and talk about what could be done. And we were sort of drowning in that system. And so we have revamped. I have gotten 2 more complaints just today. Mr. Barco mentioned he was one of them, and one of the very first ones, where we're trying to compile the evidence base. So everything that we've talked about tonight, but bringing to the Fair Rent Commission the pictures, the proof in writing that there is no way to contact, right? We're asking residents to screenshot the complaints, go through the portal, follow the process. But when that isn't done, I think in conjunction with what we're trying to do legally, we then have a vice to say, this is what we're talking about and this is what's happening, so that it sort of all comes to fruition, if that answers your question. But we're trying to do it legally.
No, I think that does, because I think there's this sort of like this 3-prong approach. And so I really wanted Chris's question to be answered more thoroughly, I guess, right? So I just wanted you to provide that.
I don't know that I did, because I can't give you everything that we are working, though, to figure out what's within our realm. And I think once legal came in, that will expound upon that.
Yeah, and I guess maybe just to as bluntly state it, if it reaches to a situation that someone, because of space heaters or other issues, they are in a situation that's unsafe, is there a way that we can get them to a safer situation?
I will guarantee you, up until this point and going forward, as long as I'm in this position, there has not been one resident in this town that was put in a situation that was not removed and offered a safer place. I cannot say that's true for the hot water, but that wasn't an imminent safety issue up to that point, and all the way up, it has been approved. I've gotten nothing but, I'm sorry, but the word, not acceptance, but approval to do whatever needed to be done. But safety-wise, those residents have been offered residents outside of there on the town's expense, in which we have discussed recouping some of the expense all the way back to even the water a couple weeks ago. But so if you're asking, is there a way getting them out of there? If we find it is a fire, it is a no heat situation, anything that other than mold, we even discussed as a town purchasing the kits, paying for that testing. So that is being addressed, but imminent safety is not up for discussion, and we have addressed and provided safe situation, and we'll continue to do so.
Thanks. And then my second question is also for the folks who are there now, who have been waiting in some cases, who may have to wait longer for pending litigation. I'm going to ask this question, I guess, carefully, because I don't want folks to take the wrong way. If people stop paying their rent, does that potentially open up some sort of arbitration or negotiation process, or is it something that will become such a bad credit risk, even in a situation like this, that it hoses their credit when they can't get another place if they start looking?
That's legal advice.
I don't know. Where could someone get an answer to that question if they were
yes,
wondering?
You can.
Is
So that's a good question. The paying the rent, I think, is not a bad idea. The real question is on the effect on the credit. And really, that's something that we really can't control. It sounds like it would probably be an appropriate remedy at times to not pay the rent. And under the consumer protection,
I mean, where could someone, if they wanted to have that conversation, reach out to? I guess would probably be.
as I said, we're going to have we have private counsel who's aware of these issues. That we
I
are
don't want to
happy.
interrupt you. I'm not the attorney. I can just tell you that they're continuing to be evicted, so I'm not going to.
Right, they continue to be evicted, but if you go to the housing court, you can make an argument on it not being uninhabitable at the housing court. And they're going to make you put the rent into the court until they get a decision
I
on
would
it.
think it'd be a case-by-case basis, too. Depending on your situation, you may have the remedy of withholding rent, and others maybe not.
Right, so
Seek counsel.
I would say to seek counsel, and that's why we have provided that. I mean, I talked to the attorney. I don't want to say his name out because I just don't want to say it. Melissa will be more than happy to provide the information. But I talked to that attorney. He's relatively well-known and has experience doing these types of cases in a large apartment complex setting. So I was more than comfortable to have him get cases referred to him. And I really do think that's part of it, is that, the private causes of action could end up being very effective as being a motivation for them, as well as the insurance issue. Like, one of my really thoughts was, if you start having residents who have mold tests and they start putting the owner on notice, who then has to put their carrier on notice, that carrier is going to be, you could get hit for $1 million on a single mold claim. I mean, they can be very serious, and the carrier's not going to, they're paying their premium, that's what they pay. But if the carrier is looking at a major payment, they're going to want to see action taken.
Can I ask
We
just
tried to think of
pick up
every
on-
way possible. So
I'll get to my other question. I know maybe he wants to go, but just on Chris's point, does the town have the authority to, lack of a better term, intercept the rental payments to the landlord and put them in escrow until things get done?
I'd have to really look at that, if it's ever possible to do something like that, under what circumstances. I couldn't give you an answer offhand. Oh, Melissa can answer it.
We're just tag team.
Go right ahead.
So I can tell you, not an illegal, but through the Fair Rent Commission, there is that capability. If the Fair Rent Commission does deem with the proof that the complainant is in the right, that is, to answer your question, yes. It can be escrowed through the finance department here in town.
Because that way the tenant is not risking their credit, yet you're still getting the message.
If it goes through the process of the Fair Rent Commission, that is an option, but it does have to go through that process.
I have other questions, but I know Mimi.
Yeah, so it's not an automatic. I mean, I think that's what you were thinking, if there's some way to do it. You have to actually have.
I don't know what the mechanism, just more conceptual than mechanical, but. I'll ask my other questions later, but I know Mimi was next.
So let me ask you a question about.
I think Mimi was going to go.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
I really don't have a question, because a lot of it would go towards legal strategy, and we don't want to go there right now. But what I would ask is that we are continually updated every step of the way what's going on, because we may have questions down the line depending on how they respond to you.
I have been pretty communicative with the manager and with Dana, with Ms. Evans. So I have sent, reports. We've sent them the memos. We've sent them the action, all that material. They've gotten that. So if you want to take a look at that, you just ask. I would prefer that you go through the manager or through Dana, who they've already gotten it.
We would probably go to executive session, wouldn't we, Mayor? To review that.
I just think like we're really we're getting a little too deep into it, right? So this is supposed to be a very high level. Hey, we want you to understand that we've been on top of this for quite some time. There is this three-prong approach, and these are the various avenues to addressing the issue. Whether or not we need to be updated, if there's a motion filed or discovery's been completed, I don't think is necessary. But certainly, providing an update, hey, this is where we are, next month, I'm sure, Ray could do that. But
Well,
I think we need to be cautious, right?
We update our client. We update the manager when we do things. And actually, Dana also. I mean, Ms. Evans.
I don't have a
McGee,
question.
I'm sorry.
I don't have a question on the litigation itself, but I just want from a town side, maybe somebody can answer this. When there are serious code violations, do we penalize somebody who is in violation of the town code, right? I'm sure that's the case. So I just want to know what is being the maximum penalty that has been, what's the right word? Incurred on. Imposed on, thank you. Imposed on concierge. And have we been doing that with some regularity? Because it sounds like to me that this happens literally every day, right? So we should be imposing some.
I'm not. So my understanding is that prior council had provided guidance with regard to that, and I'm not going to go into what that was. I think that's attorney-client from what the guidance that was provided. I might not necessarily have agreed with that guidance, and so we are at a point now where a lot of the citations and violations were not brought to conclusion.
Yeah, the reason I ask that is there doesn't seem to be any deterrent here, right? I mean, if I have code violations in my house, I don't know if I'll be able to live there for 10 more years. If I have a leaky roof and all kinds of safety violations, I don't know I don't know if the child services will come and take my kid away. I mean, I'm just thinking, how can it go on for 10 years and without any conclusion to these violations, right? Like you stated, I think that's what you said, right?
Well, I think that, first of all, it hasn't been 10 years, and I think that really the last couple of years has been the greatest amount of escalation. Prior to that, it probably would have been something that we would have noticed being an outlier, but not to the extent that it is now. And as I said, there was prior guidance from the attorney before me, and I'm just not going to. I'm not.
No, I understand. I
understand.
I'm not
going to comment on that. I personally don't agree with it. And right now, we intend to enforce everything.
Okay.
So that's not going to be an issue.
Yeah, I was just trying to get to the point where I completely understand that flow of the flow of this case, if you will, right? Like the flow of this complaint, and we filed a complaint a few years ago, right? And then
I didn't file it.
I know you didn't, but
I know.
But I'm just thinking where we were and where we are now, from our perspective, not from what you're doing right now. I understand everything you elaborated on, right, and articulated. I get that. I was just trying to get at why we had so much time lapse between where we started, 2 years, 3 years, wherever that first piece of complaint was, and our attorney took action, right, and then it didn't get to any conclusion until I know you disagree with it as well. you stated that. So I was just trying to get that. I know probably you cannot like elaborate further, but I'm just kind of
I just want to say on that point, I mean,
words.
Lawyers, when we get involved in matters, sometimes there's strategic decisions to be made. And so I may have made a different decision. I'm not necessarily saying that that prior decision was incorrect. All I'm saying is that I would have probably made a different decision. But when it comes to strategy, you know, every attorney has their own thought of how a case is going to proceed and may have an idea of how a case is going to proceed that I may have had a different idea. I have a different idea now because right now my feeling is that if we can't get an agreement that we enter, that we can enforce, that we're going to try the case.
No.
Well, and I think
Fair enough.
I think we can acknowledge that the past couple of years there's been a lot of turnover with ownership. So the first thing you have to do is figure out who you're going to serve, right? So you can go through a million different attorneys, but every time that place turns over, you know, who are we going to go after, right? And so I think
Fair enough. That makes sense.
I will say that from my understanding, and I'm not handling the fair rent cases, one of my partners is, but from my understanding, their defense has been unbelievably aggressive. So when they have come in, they have really defended themselves. And so, I mean, and I know Melissa's going to agree with that. I mean, they have come in with, lawyers, and they have taken a very aggressive stance in front of the Fair Rent Commission on their cross-examinations, et cetera. So, they've hired lawyers to fight hard, in the few instances when they've been dragged into the Fair Rent Commission.
Attorney Boria, can
Sure.
this attorney that's interested in representing concierge clients, is that something, would that person come into Fair Rent Commission and represent them there as well at that level?
Well, once again, the client has to reach an agreement with the lawyer and decide
No,
how
but
they
I mean,
want to handle
I'm just
it.
not necessarily that specific attorney. I don't mean to ask you specifically, but I mean, in that type of proceeding, is that normal or does that person come pro se?
Well, typically, they're going to be pro se because typically you have a tenant who doesn't have the resources to hire counsel.
Yeah.
So they're not going to have the resources to hire counsel, and you're not going to get attorney's fees generally in a fair rent hearing.
Okay.
And even if you do, it may not be enough to pay for the lawyer that you actually hire. And so I think that I think they've all been pro se, haven't they, Melissa? I think they've all been pro se, the actual hearings, which is always a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Always, unless it's a professional pro se, and there are a few of those, but I think most of these folks are not. They're just tenants that got stuck.
Go ahead. Ray.
Yeah, just to comment on the question about the time lapse. Another factor is that there's been a change in philosophy in the past year or so. Change in philosophy with fair rent, trying to be more aggressive and getting Morrison to take over. So that's part of the plan, the overall plan to do that.
No, thank you. And I didn't mean to say 10 years. I was going back to 2016, which you noted before.
I brought that date up because what I did
Fair
was
Rent Commission complaints, yeah.
I wanted to find out when the fair rent complaints started, and I wanted to get a time period where they were the only property. So as far as our records indicate, the only property that's had fair rent complaints since 2016 has been Concierge.
Yeah.
So that's why I said, and one of the reasons why I brought it up at the very beginning is because we're not talking about other property owners right now. We're talking about this one property owner, and we have a reason to talk about them. They're an outlier. We haven't had this experience. So as I said at the beginning, wouldn't ordinarily come and give this kind of status report with pending litigation, but because of the public interest, and then when I saw these folks here tonight, I felt like I'm really happy I'm here because I want you guys to know we're going to do everything we can. And as I said, ask Melissa. I think that may be a really good avenue for you guys also to take a look at.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today.
My pleasure, actually.
I just had a couple quick questions, and then I understand if you can't comment on them, so feel free to say that. I understand this is an outlier within the town. With regards to this property owner, and I guess they own multiple properties throughout the country, is this an outlier within their portfolio?
So I couldn't tell you that for fact. I do know when I looked that the majority of the properties that they own are relatively new. So they would not have the experience of dealing with an older property with these types of issues. Now, they may have properties that are older, and there have been complaints, but this is a huge outfit. So if you look at the majority of the properties, they're relatively new.
Yeah, I'm just trying to gauge, like, is there some ray of hope that, hey, this isn't what they typically do, and they're going to, whatever. But now, time will tell if that's the
Basically
case.
asked the general counsel if this is how he thought they should run their business, if he thought this is how an owner should act. I mean, we went over very specific instances of conduct that were egregious. And he seemed to take it very seriously, and he got pretty upset. I mean, we got contentious for a while there, and then once we realized this is going to get us nowhere, we tried to find a path where we could work together.
Right.
And so, they also have indicated that they want to try to put our people on site, work out a plan to get our people on site. Our first guy, I think, is going to be our building official because we want to close out the permits. So we gave him a list of 40 permits that we really, because a lot of it's electrical. Those things got to be closed out. Otherwise, there's issues. So, and then we've talked to them about the water, and we talked to them about the heat, and we told them we really need a plan from them. I don't own that building. I don't know really, how you would solve these problems. That's not what I do. But we told them we need a plan, and these are the priorities. So, they're aware of the situation and what the problems are and what we can do.
Right. And just quick, the other question, are there state or federal laws or regulations that are also applicable in this case that could be used as additional leverage?
So I don't know I didn't take a look at federal. As far as the state is concerned, the Connecticut Unfair Trade Practices Act, which is, as I said, I think would be something that would be available as a remedy because any misrepresentation. So what we heard about, and this is not an unusual complaint, the models being different from the actual apartments. So we would call that a bait and switch. Mm-hmm. So bait and switch is pretty much a classic unfair trade practice. And under our unfair trade practice statute, if you make an unfair trade practice claim, the Attorney General is supposed to get a copy of the complaint. So the Attorney General actually has jurisdiction with regard to unfair trade practice claims. They usually, 99% of the time, unless they're going to make the paper, they don't do anything. They get the copy of the complaint and say, great, thank you for letting us know, good luck. If it's something that can make the newspaper, they might jump into it, but that's very rare. So and then on Consumer Protections is a totally separate agency. And so under 47A, starting at -13, there's a whole bunch of remedies if they don't provide heat or hot water. You can relocate, you can force them to pay you for that. There's a whole bunch of remedies in there, but once again, I'm just talking in general. Obviously, you need to hire your own attorney to look at this. Every situation is different and specific. But I think that there's probably help in these statutes and under the Unfair Trade Practice Act besides what the town can do. And they probably breach your contracts too. So, but once again, I understand. So what I'm trying to do is figure out ways that you can hire counsel and then have them be responsible for the legal fees.
Yeah, I mean, just spitballing, you've got an organization that's out of state owning this place that's in state. Now you're crossing state lines. Are there federal? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm just looking for additional leverage to pull because the more leverage you can pull, the faster you can get them to do stuff.
I would have to think about, the federal, you're going to have to be looking at, you're not going to get it. You're going to have a federal question. So I'm not going to get into the details of it, but generally, if you have diversity, you need $75,000 in damages, or maybe it's 90 now is the threshold for federal jurisdiction. So if it's citizens of different states. I don't think most of these claims you could actually say would be that value, first of all. Second of all, I don't know you have complete diversity on either side. You can't go to federal court unless you have citizens of different states, and it has to be uniform on both sides. So if you had a Connecticut defendant and Connecticut plaintiffs, even if you had an out-of-state defendant as a co-defendant, you wouldn't have diversity in no federal court. As far as federal action statutes are concerned, you'd have a hard time. The racial epithets, 1983, I don't know. On that, with that's the only thing I heard that might rise to the level of a federal case.
Yeah. But sometimes just the threat of it can move things, but you know better than I do, so.
Yeah. I'm good at threatening people, believe me. So, but one of the things that we really tried to do was we tried to think of a multifaceted approach.
Yeah.
So that's not just the town. We
No, it
can
sounds
put as
like
much
it,
pressure on them in as many ways as possible.
Yeah.
Just one more question about that, Madam Mayor. Morris, the Connecticut Attorney General's office, are they aware of this situation? Could they potentially take action on this? Because, they can bring their own unfair trade practice complaint if they're so inclined.
I have not notified the AG's office. As I said, I have not done that. I wouldn't do that yet, with all due respect, because I want to try to settle this case. So, I mean, I'd like to give them an opportunity over the next few weeks to come and really settle this thing and show us good faith and really deal with us. And I maybe am being overly optimistic because I couldn't believe that after they knew we were going to have the meeting, that they still had an incident. And we put up 12 people. I mean, we don't, on the question of the safety, we have relocated people into hotels, and they have done it. So that does happen when it's necessary, but I haven't done that. We haven't done that yet.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Attorney Boyer, thank you for your presentation, but just to be real direct, these are all legal actions that you can take, and they're going to take time. Is there anything that you can say this evening that when these residents go back to their homes, that they're going to have water in the next 2 or 3 days, they're going to have heat, they're going to be living in a facility that they're paying rent for, and they should be getting these basic services? I mean, I'll accept a yes or no. I mean, it's that simple. That's really what we want to know.
Right. Well, I'd have to say I'd have to say no. I don't have that in my tool chest as a lawyer, so I don't really think that I could. I mean, other than the fact that we've made it very clear to them how serious the town's taking this, and that we intend to use all the resources at our disposal to bring them into compliance, and that therefore they should reach a voluntary agreement. And I've told them flat out, you're going to lose this case. If we try it, you're going to lose. So that's the only thing you can do. That's why I'm really advocating for a settlement.
Right.
And
Respectfully, though, a settlement's not going to fix the problem. Right. We need a contractor to come in and start doing work, and we don't have the authority as a town to do that. And so we have to rely on the property owner to go in and do it, is what you're really saying.
Right. Either that, or we have to get orders to force the property owner to do it.
And that takes time.
That's the problem, right? That's the legal issue, and it would be hard to go any faster than what we already have set up.
And that's why you want it as a stipulated judgment. correct?
That's why I want to stipulate a judgment so that the court could retain jurisdiction, and if there's a breach, we can ask for contempt.
Yeah, unfortunately, it just doesn't solve the problem that people don't have water, don't have heat, and that's the problem tonight, not 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now. So if we can't solve it, I got nothing else to ask on it.
I can tell you that I will talk to the lawyers tomorrow and let them know exactly what you've just asked me. And I will tell them that my client is very unhappy and you're making me look bad. So what do you think I'm going to do? All right? That's all I can do. I really can't do anything else. If they want to do it right, they'll do it. If they don't, we'll see them in court.
Now, respectfully, it's not you that looks bad. It's the hundreds of residents that are living in a condition that's not acceptable.
I understand.
And that's the answer. That's what they have to answer to. Not us as a council or a town, but the residents that are paying the rent in the building.
Well, and if the residents, as I said, we are providing a referral. And so if they start getting sued, then on an individual basis, and those claims, some of those claims might be really difficult for them to defend, especially the unfair trade practice claims, because you get punitive damages and attorney's fees. You don't just get attorney's fees, you get punitives too.
I'll try to be brief. To me, this is, a personal level, it's just awful to hear. A little bit disgusting. I'm going to be personal about it. But the question I have here, just out of curiosity, the percentage of folks that live in those units, what's the percentage of the folks having the issues overall versus how many people are there in population?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that because all we would know is who's actually verbally made complaints. And so there may well be the issue is much more widespread and people are just dealing with it and we're not aware of it. From what I have learned about what's going on at that facility, with the use of the space heaters, the fire department having to bring its own water in, I would imagine that the issue may be more widespread than even what we've heard. So I don't know the answer to that. I just don't know the answer. I know we did get some numbers from Scott, right? Scott had given us numbers with the number of residents and all that stuff. But I don't think that would have answered your question. We have gotten some information from one of the residents that gave us the number of total renters, at Century Hills, and a lot of that information. But I don't think we had that answer to that specific question.
Well, it sounds like there's issues in the common areas and the parking area, so isn't that everybody? I mean, is that the simple answer?
Right, well, yeah, the fob thing, yeah, that's everybody, right. We have a gentleman, I don't want to call on people, but we have a gentleman with his hand up in the back there,
I
guys.
just want to say, currently, right now, you have 2 whole buildings.
Okay, you can't, first of all, you can't. Respectfully, you can't.
Okay.
But if you were, you'd have to come up to the microphone again, but public comment is closed. And I apologize, not that we don't want to hear you. It's just, but you can put it in someone's ear to tell him, and he can.
No, I had a
he can
I had a
he can talk
conversation
about
with Attorney Seaman today. What I basically said to him was, we had people show up first thing in the morning at the town hall. They didn't have hot water since Thursday. I said, so, you know, you gotta do something. I told them, you gotta do something. This is not acceptable. And so apparently they're gonna be on site and they're gonna have a meeting tomorrow and we're gonna have an answer on Friday. And I just really can't do anything more than that at this point.
And as far as that goes, I can just tell you, when we started doing inspections I went with fire marshals and health department, out of 10 apartments, 8 or 9 of them did not have working smoke alarms, if that gives you like a statistic.
Right.
2 weekends ago, when we brought water up there, all 4, building 100, 200, 300, and 400, had no running water whatsoever. We brought 2 pallets of water in 3 different locations. So I don't have a specific statistic for you necessarily, but I can tell you as a town, when we're tackling some of these issues in every single building, we have hundreds of photos of holes in the wall, insulation falling, mold in the walls, black mold and spores. I mean, it's every single building. So I can't give you a specific, but I can tell you that what we've tackled over the last year or two is not specific to one building or
Okay.
one person. It's across.
That's fair, and I appreciate that, but what's the number of units?
600?
I want to say it's closer to 700.
So closer to 700, almost 700.
Closer to 500.
500?
500. I was including the
So,
townhouses up behind.
so the risk that comes through my mind all the time is looking at an end game of all this, right? People are going to get smarter. People are going to know. Communications are going to go out. The more we communicate and go in front of the public, next thing you know, you have a mass exodus. No one's going to go there. That's an effect, long-term effect to the town as well, right? So that's an issue for me, if I'm seeing this correctly. So it's sad that here we're hearing today, but there's going to be a ripple effect, and it's going to be a ripple effect back to the business. And not only that, I'm looking at financial constraints for that business. You know, they're going to get to a point where it's like, do they even have enough money to take care of this? So how do we think through that, or how do we mitigate through that
That was
risk?
something that was a comment that was made by the general counsel to me during our meeting with regard to one of the issues, and he said, well, we have to deal with that, we probably go bankrupt.
So the question is, how do we mitigate
That's
something
not,
like that?
I mean, that's not, you know, those are kind of things that are said often, and we can't stop because of that, at least until somebody tells me to. Otherwise, we're not stopping.
And one last thing, and that's maybe my last comment, it's not really a question or anything like that, but I think it's important, you know, like today, if something breaks in my house, what I'll do, I'll go to the internet, find out who can fix it, right? There's a way to intake that process. Because this is, and this kind of leans toward how many people are faced with this out of the 500 or 600 units, it's going to be overwhelming capacity coming back to, well, how do we manage this, right? So what I'm getting at is, for me, what's important is what's the process of intake for guidance and options, all right? I've learned a lot tonight myself, all right? But not everyone's going to hear that or know that. And if there's 300 or 400 out of 500 or 600 that are faced with this, and there's a handful here, right, that we're trying to figure out is how do we intake this? Who do we go to? What's the point of contact to intake these questions to get this, to help solve at least the immediate needs, right? Because this is a long-term conversation, but what's the immediate needs and how do we intake to at least do the obvious, the low-hanging fruit as they call it? And I think that's going to help solve the capacity overwhelming piece coming into the departments because people have questions, they need help. So how do we intake that most efficiently to at least deal with the low-hanging fruit? I'll pause, but that's all I have for questions.
I understand, and one of the things is the communication was absolutely a huge issue, even though it's a, you know, it's not an issue that is a safety issue, it's a maintenance issue, but it's the issue that causes a lot of other problems because you don't have somebody to go to, so you have problems, and then they don't get fixed, and then they get worse and worse, and they keep hiring different people, so there's a constant turnover. And so we've said all these things to them, and we just can't, we're not going to take over operation of the property. So I think that we put as much pressure on them as we can at this point. I really do. And so we'll just have to see how they respond to it.
Just maybe a closing remark from me.
Thank you, Ray.
Are you shutting me down from closing remark?
No, just a remark, that's all. Just to add to the conversation, we've been working on the intake process for quite a while now, trying to tweak it. We will be streamlining it. People will have an identification number, a person to call, a person to go to in Town Hall when it gets to this point to be processing complaints with the Fair Rent Commission. We've been working on that for months. And a big part of that is Morris coming in, taking over the lawsuit, and also identifying the issues. And we're working with his partners also for the Fair Rent Commission. So we're ramping up to answer your question also. What can we do? It's not going to be Friday. It's going to take a couple of weeks to get this going, to get our process down, to get the right people identified. One of them sitting here right now, Melissa. There will be another person, a key point person, will be partnering with the health district also. So we're pulling all these pieces together. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we're working on it, and we will do it.
No, I think that that's a valid point, because I think one of the things Attorney Boria had said is that we generally prefer collaboration and working together, but it's obviously not working here. So we had to change strategies, and we changed legal counsel. And sometimes that's what it takes, and we have to get more aggressive. We've gotten more aggressive, but there are so many things that need to be pulled together. And like Melissa said, we are a small town, and I've been out sick. I've missed quite a few meetings, and I haven't given any mayor's reports, but I pulled my notes, and one of them was to talk, this was a while ago about the water pipes bursting, because we had our volunteer firefighters out the whole weekend, right? I mean, Ray and I were out there. Deputy Mayor Sharmant was out there. It was horrific, so we get it. We understand it. And I want to say one thing. The very, very first comment that was made this evening said, we shouldn't be treating our residents this way. Well, I want to tell you, as the mayor of Rocky Hill, we're not treating residents at Concierge any differently than we would treat anyone else. We fully respect those residents. We are fully aware of the issues, and we are acting upon them. I can assure you that we will enforce every ordinance, every regulation, every law that we can to its full extent with Attorney Boria. We will also do things through the Fair Rent Commission, and we will also provide resources which Melissa will give out with respect to residents being able to reach out to this attorney, who will then help with private action. So I want everyone to rest assured that we are on top of this. We're not going to let it go, and we're doing everything that we can at this moment. Go ahead.
Attorney Boria?
Sure.
Came back up. I would suggest to you that Concierge is well aware. For them to say that they're not aware of the extent of the problem is disingenuous. There's just no question about it. They are aware. Would be number one. Number two, if they suggest that they've spent $5 million, I suspect that your plan on Friday of action items and their plan would have a escrowed budget of $5 million plus, knowing the extent of the physical damages to those buildings to cause all these outages. And there's no question that when some of these sweeping pipe breaks and freezes and different things that are happening, ceilings collapsing, they affect usually 100 people at 100 units at a time. So 2 buildings go down 200. And then next time it's another 2 buildings. And that's my perspective.
I agree. I mean, I think that they are looking at a very, very serious and costly situation if we're not able to get this thing resolved in the very, very near future. And once again, we are worried about the other issues that were raised with regard to the tenants and their ability to have a good place to live. And I'm going to try to get this done as fast as I possibly can, guys. I'll do the best I can. I will do everything I can. So that's all I can tell you.
Thank you. Thank you. We
Thank you
appreciate
very
that.
much.
Thank you for coming
having
in.
me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We take a 5-minute recess?
We could. There's a motion to take a 5-minute recess.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to resume. We're going to start with appointments and resignations.
Madam Mayor, could I just, after appointments and resignations, I'd like to amend the agenda once again and add new business item B after appointments and resignations?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Oh, so, Councilor Duff, do you have any appointments, resignations?
I do not. We have the, okay. Yeah, I do not have any appointments, resignations.
We have none on our side as well, appointments or resignations, but we do have a change in the Commission on Inclusion and Innovation memo sent to us from Town Manager Ray Carpentino. Two commissioners, Edora Cobb and Jillian Maynard, have resigned from the Commission on Inclusion and Innovation. Two alternatives, Stacy Moore and Kevin Tuttle, were recommended by the Executive Committee of the Commission, and that would be Chair Tom Klausker and Vice Chair Rebecca Markowitz and Secretary Aparna Gusham, to move into the two vacated positions. According to the town ordinance, the vacancies on the commission shall be filed by appointment of the town council. I'm sending you this notice in the event that you wish to make the recommendation, which we do make the recommendation at this council meeting now.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, moving on, we're going to take up new business. B, discussion, possible action, consideration to establish an ordinance to abate taxes of a surviving spouse of a police officer, firefighter, or emergency medical technician who dies while in the performance of such duties. Connecticut General Statute 12-81X.
I was approached by Chief Garahy. Keep going. And he thought this would be a great idea, and I think it is too. So he submitted a letter, and we'd asked him to come up and just give a brief explanation of the purpose and how it will benefit.
Welcome.
Thank you. And I need to start by thanking the town manager. I brought this to him Wednesday or Thursday. We had a discussion. We discussed a couple possible solutions, and boom, Monday night it's on the agenda. So that was great, real quick. The fire department's had 3 line of duty deaths in our 96-year history, and it was 96 years last weekend. And the first 2 deaths, we didn't have the pension plan or the tax abatement, and it was more truly unsupported or uncompensated positions, however we want to put that. The 3rd line of duty death, most recently last March, was Jim Lamar, who had been receiving the tax abatement and was eligible for the pension and so forth. The pension has a survivor's benefit. As we started looking into that, I personally felt it would be the right thing to do was to extend that survivor's benefit to the tax abatement. And that's when I went to the town manager, and that's what brought us here tonight.
Okay. Did you have a question? One of you have a question?
There was just, Chief, our tax abatement, I believe, is $500 a year. Is that, or I'm not positive on the number.
It's $2,000 a year.
$2,000, okay.
It originally started out at $500, and the Connecticut Senate and the governor signed it up to $2,000.
Okay. Thank you.
And just to that point, does that phase in with service time? Like the pension does?
I guess it could be. The state allows you to give a maximum of $2,000, How you do it, if you phase it in with service time or whatever it might be, is left up to the municipality. We've got thresholds. So if you make your threshold, you get the full amount.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a second one, there was a second amendment to the ordinance that said if you retired after, I want to say July 1st, 2007, with 25 years of service to the town, minimum 55 years of age, you received a tax abatement.
So I think.
So Jimmy qualified for both of them.
So right now, it would just be whatever, the wording would be like whatever up to the state maximum is, or?
Yeah.
The process is the town council must adopt an ordinance. So we have to go through the ordinance procedure, public hearing, 30-day notice, 10-day notice. And then probably the wording would just be, the wording from the statute. It's fairly brief statute.
Does it say up to 2,000 though, or it says 2,000?
I think it says up to, or no, I'm thinking, it's new to me also.
Okay.
I'm thinking it says $2,000.
Because the up to would then leave us with this burden of trying to figure out everything, right? So we just want to maybe have a flat fee.
Yeah, or if we say like up to state, whatever the state maximum is, because if it changes, then we have to do another ordinance.
But if you're comfortable with the concept, I can have a package for you to review at a later date.
Should we take a vote on that?
So would this be a motion to direct the town council to draft a proposed ordinance along these lines? Is that
Yes.
what we need to do tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll do a motion.
Okay.
So, Madam Mayor, so I move that that we direct the town council to draft a proposed ordinance for consideration by the full council, authorizing the town of Rocky Hill to provide a survivor's tax abatement benefit for a fire and ambulance?
Police, fire, and
ambulance spouses. Oh, I'm sorry, it's the spouses of police, fire, and ambulance personnel who lose their lives in the course of duty.
Okay.
How's that?
Second.
You have to repeat that now. All in favor? Aye. Okay. So we'll
That
get
was
back
great.
to you.
I appreciate everything. Thank you guys very much. And Ray, thank you again.
Thank you. Okay. We are all the way up to approval of the minutes.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the town council meetings of February 6th, 2022, 23.
That's wrong. Yeah, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Everyone is here?
It does say
And one abstention?
Abstention.
Okay. Moving on to subcommittees, finance.
Finance did meet. I will make hopefully a quicker presentation than usual. We received our audit report. We received an unqualified opinion. It's the highest opinion we can get. Our finances were in order. Our internal controls were in order. Everything seemed like it was in great shape, including our single audit. So keep that at the high level. Our assessor was in and gave us some information on the current tax rate. Just bear with me to get to the right page on that. And I'll just read his notes. A few pages up. One more. All right, so our grand list grew by $20.1 million for 2022, or 0.88%. Real estate decreased by $6.1 million. Personal property was up $7.7 million. And motor vehicles grew by $18.6 million. Real estate primarily declined due to two court decisions related to Walmart and KRE BSL Husky of Rocky Hill. Personal property tax increased because of many small businesses reinvesting, Riggs Distiller and CT Pharmaceutical Solutions. And motor vehicles resulted in an increase partially because of commercial motor vehicles coming off their property tax exemptions, as well as an increase in the commercial vehicle values as well as the value of existing vehicles increasing. So that drove those increases for the grand list. The town did receive its town road aid and its ECS money on time in January. And we also reviewed the town pensions, and we'll save that discussion for budget workshop. I think that's the best place for that, because that could be a longer discussion. And just go do a quick highlight. Overall, revenues and expenses were in line with expected. Interest is still above where we budgeted, which is due to the rate increases primarily, and some CDs that we're doing. Building permit fees are 78% at this point. The prior year, they were only at 60%. The only item on the expense side that, well, two items on the expense side is overtime is slightly higher than budgeted, primarily due to dispatch and highway road maintenance. And of course, our fuel costs are higher than budgeted. And that concludes the finance report.
Thank you. Government operations.
Government Operations has not had a meeting since our last town council meeting. We're next scheduled to meet on March 6th.
Public safety.
Sure. Madam Mayor, Public Safety met earlier this evening. Fire reported responding to 50 incidents, 546 training hours recorded, 0 firefighter injuries reported, and we kept the reports brief, so I'm just hitting those major points. They did note, though, that they have billed $65,000 to the highway response program that we've entered into, so that is good. The reason why we kept them shorter is we had presentations from the fire, police, regarding our drone program, so I encourage folks to go to the public safety replay on YouTube, and they can see a demonstration of the drone right here in our chambers.
Pretty
and
cool.
And the license plate reader technology. Police reported that calls for service were 3,097, 25 criminal arrests, 32 motor vehicle accidents, training hours 398. They are fully staffed. They have 1 dispatch opening to fill. 2 officers are out on light duty. They did perform in January, mid-January, a surprise audit of under tobacco and alcohol establishments that sell tobacco and the vaping products. And there are 16 such facilities in Rocky Hill. 13 passed their inspection, which meant that they were selling and managing their product appropriately. 3 were not in compliance, and they will continue to do possible spot inspections on those establishments going forward. Ambulance reported 377 calls for the month, 39 active writing members, 9 associate members, 10 probationary members, which are members in training, 2 medical leave, and 4 school leave. There are 64 active members of the ambulance, volunteer ambulance. And interestingly enough, they did have to do a sex trafficking state certification course, of which we don't have any to report and haven't had any to report, but they are being sensitized to watch out for that should the case arise in town. And our next meeting is scheduled for March 20th at 5:30.
Mimi, something tells me that if you and I were in charge of public safety, we wouldn't have drones flying around the council chambers. Just saying. Senior liaison.
No meetings since the last council meeting, so no report.
Land acquisition and farmland preservation.
Sure, there hasn't been a recent meeting. Our last meeting was January 24th. It was a special meeting, and we met for the purpose of recommending to recommending the land use plan put together by Zuvik, our contractors, and our Yukon consulting team and town staff on the Streska Farm. That plan did go to open space and was passed on February 8th. And I don't know if Ray has anything to add to that.
Yes, Planning and Zoning Commission approved the plan, I believe, last week. So we have Planning and Zoning Commission, Wetland Commission, and in the meantime, Zuvik is working on putting the bid specs together for the contractor for construction, and then we'll have to put a bid package together for the steep grant for the barn. So things are starting to move quickly.
And the next meeting will be February 28th at 6 o'clock.
Thank you. Liaison to the state rep and the state senator.
No report at this time.
School liaison.
Yes, Madam Mayor, as you know, Rocky Hill has a substantial Asian community of over 2,000 residents and is home to many cricket enthusiasts. So over the past few years, many residents and parents of school-age children have reached out to me in my role as the school liaison and you as well, Mayor, to advocate for a cricket field for all our young cricket enthusiasts here in Rocky Hill. Many in Connecticut have been focused on promoting youth cricket, and one of the leaders and champions of youth cricket in our Rocky Hills own Gunny Swarna, or known as Coach Gunny lovingly in the community. He runs a New England Youth Cricket Academy and conducts a youth coaching clinic at an indoor facility in Cromwell. Has been doing that for a while, coaching over 50 kids and graduating several who have gone on and played at various levels of the sport in the United States. And Coach Gunny aspires to introduce cricket to kids in local schools here in Rocky Hill with trained PE instructors in Rocky Hill and around Connecticut. So with that context, Mayor and I have been hard at work to identify a suitable, feasible, and cost-effective location for a cricket field since we first came into office. And tonight, we have some excellent news to share with you and the viewers at home. The Parks and Rec Department has identified Maxwell Park as a possible site for a youth cricket field. The details are still being hammered out by the Parks and Rec. But myself as a cricket fan and as someone who loves youth sports, I'm really excited to explore this opportunity to build this long-awaited youth cricket field at Maxwell Park. I would also like to thank at this time and take this opportunity to thank our town manager, Ray Carpentino, and Director of Parks and Rec, Craig Bowman, for their due diligence and detailed prep work to identify this for possible action. So I thank them for all their work there. And lastly, I want to keep it short tonight, as we had some other things on the agenda as well. I would like to give Rocky Hill Education Foundation, which is a shout out. They are welcoming the Harlem Wizards to Rocky Hill High School gym on Friday, March 17th, in the middle of March Madness. So we will have our own March Madness here locally in Rocky Hill. So this will be between Wizards and the Rocky Hill Dream Team. And tickets can be purchased to see this extravaganza by going to Rocky Hill Public Schools homepage and at rockyhillps.com and clicking on the link which is on their homepage. So I would recommend to everyone to go there and buy their tickets and support the Rocky Hill Foundation. And that's the report. Thank you.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Is the youth field smaller than, I assume, the standard?
Those details are with Craig Bowman, so I would at some point, I would recommend him coming up here and maybe even talking about it during the budget season or like whenever the right opportunity is.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it is. The youth, there's not enough room for an adult-size cricket field, but it's a youth field with it.
Thank you.
CIP Committee,
Has not met since the last council meeting.
Economic Development Subcommittee.
Also has not met since the last council meeting.
Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda, we have 3 items. Approval of the job description, Human Services Specialist, MEUI. Approval of the job description, Librarian, 1, AFSCME. And approval of the bid roof project, Griswold Middle School.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Old business, discussion possible action, American Rescue Plan, ARP funding options. So we have a sheet.
You do. I usually say nothing, but
She has to
it is
now.
a very long sheet, and I'm not going to read this tonight, but just a refresher on the ARPA funds. If we go remembering back to when we started with ARPA, we had the interim rule, and everything that we spent had to have an ARPA COVID-related purpose. There was a discussion about revenue replacement. Initially, we did not qualify for that. Later on, when the final rule came, we did get the ability to spend according to revenue replacement. Now, with that being said, we took the $2.7 million of the ARPA money and used that as a funding source for this year's general fund. What we still have to do for audit purposes, and this is really what we're doing now, is just making an awareness that although we're taking that 2.7 and putting it into the general fund, ARPA still expects during the audit process, and we did this last year for the 1.4 million, is to go through our budget and make sure that we are really applying these things to the type of items that you would have had whether if you were in the interim rule. So what I've done is gone through our general fund budget, and these are basically the same items that you'd seen in the previous year. And this is given to the audit firm, and they select each item and make sure that that's what we're expending them on. For the most part, and like I said, I won't read each one, but the majority of the categories are for COVID mitigation or prevention measures. A lot of that you can see are related to custodial type situations, supplies, custodians. You'll notice occasionally you'll see the phrase rehire down that column. What they allow in the final rule is that prior to COVID, what were your number of full-time employees? You can increase your FTEs, we had 140 at the time, by 7%. So it's either you're having new positions or you're bringing back people for the purposes. It was more of the COVID, something that's program related. So you can see we had emergency management, the case managers for human and youth services, the senior program, we brought all of that back. So I'm just doing some high level overview of that. Public safety, again, the numbers where it says interim rule goes back to the page in the interim rule because we need that for audit. This is the explanation, and that's why these fit into the definition. So doing our due diligence to keep that audit award and to say that they did compliment us on our ARPA reporting, so we'll continue that, is to have this level of detail to justify that when we transfer money in to general fund from ARPA, that we are able to document every dollar.
Beautiful. Thank you. Is there any questions? Okay. Thank you, Mona. Moving on to B, update Connecticut Deep Grant.
Now, last time I mentioned that the temporary permit for Murphy Road to manage or consult for our DEEP grant is still pending with DEEP. However, in the meantime, we've been researching alternative ways to utilize the grant funding for the recycling. Maybe looking at not separating the bags. It's a very messy and dangerous process. So we're looking at possibly using one bag on a second run, looking at the cost to see if that's feasible. It looks like it may be. It's less expensive, even though we have grant funds, but it is less expensive. It's more economical. It's better for the environment without the trucks running back and forth using diesel. Going to a plant, having the bags separated, and then transferring everything back to the same location. So we're looking at a number of different alternatives that will implement the grant that we did win. So that's still in the works. We're working with finance. We're working with the superintendent of highways and the recycling coordinator, looking at ways to better the process for that deep grant.
I think our biggest concern is the feasibility and the sustainability of the program, because, you know, we heard even from the public, you're trucking it one way to be sorted, then you're trucking it 60 miles another way, right? And so when this $750,000 goes away, when we go to implement a project, if we were to sustain that, we would actually be charging residents a lot more than what they're paying right now. So really, it's more of the feasibility and sustainability that we're looking at, and also how much can our current hauler take on? You know, are there capabilities that they can do in terms of the organics? And it looks like there may be. So we just want to make sure we get it right. So I thank you, because they've been working on that quite a bit. And DEEP has been involved as well. So DEEP has been very supportive of looking at alternatives, right? And so we just have to see, once we have something that fits, that is doable, then we have to take that to DEEP and get their blessing. But we're not quite there yet. Any questions? Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the mayor's report. So I'll keep it short. Let's see. So, well, just in terms of the cricket field, so yeah, it would be a youth-sized cricket field, which I think is really probably the most beneficial thing that we can do for the community at this point, if it is feasible. And, you know, we can check that out during the budget session. But it is something that we could put in that would not just benefit the cricket folks, it would actually benefit the soccer folks, because we know we have a big crowd. So my understanding is this preliminary plan would accommodate 2 soccer fields and the youth-sized cricket field. For an adult-sized cricket field, it's just this massive amount of space that we don't have it presently. So I think, as Councilor Prakash had mentioned, folks had approached us quite some time ago, right? And we had been looking into this, and then COVID hit, and we had to reshuffle our priorities. But I think that we're in a good space now, where we can possibly absorb a cost of a youth field. What I find very, very intriguing about it is that we have this gentleman who came in a couple years ago, who actually is the founder of the Connecticut Youth Cricket, is it Association?
Academy, yeah.
Academy, and he's from Rocky Hill, and he's taking his kids all over, right, for competitions, and it's almost kind of embarrassing that he can't host here, right? So the other thing is that, imagine like the diversity, right? That you're creating this whole new culture of like, let's get our kids together. I don't think there's really a better way to get kids and families together than around sports, right? Like everyone just seems to, it's like a magnet, right? So any opportunity that we have to bring our children together and share traditions and cultures is really, really cool. So I'm looking forward to continuing that conversation. Thank you. You know, I did want to thank last time Chief Garahy, Rich Renstrom, and all of the volunteer firefighters, Melissa Hicks, Steve Pendle, Town Manager Carpentino, Deputy Mayor Sharmut, Police Chief Custer, everyone who was involved when the pipes did burst at Century Hills. I have not been around since that time, so I do still think it's important to thank everyone. It is pretty amazing the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes, and when you step back and think a lot of these folks are volunteers, it's really remarkable. So we are truly, truly blessed in that regard. I don't know if you've noticed, but if you drive down to the river, the owner of River's Edge has put up sort of this decorative fencing to hide all of that yuck that's behind there. And we do have someone who has indicated they're going to move in to the train depot, so hopefully that happens soon. But it's pretty exciting, and I know you guys will be super, super excited if it happens. I think what I just wanted to point out quickly before I end is that we know it is the long season for our state legislature. So Town Manager Carpentino and I had an opportunity to meet with Representative Wood recently, and we sort of gave her our long list and short list of priorities that we felt, we could use some help with funding. A couple of things that came out of my committee through CCM is something that they actually made a priority. It's firefighter EMT recruitment and retention. So recommending that there be more incentives so that these volunteer departments can get people to join, right, and then to stay, because it's super, super hard. So there is a list there. I actually ended up drafting a recommendation myself with respect to school safety that CCM picked up and made it part of their legislative priorities. And we did mention that to Representative Wood as well as Superintendent Zito, because we know that it is important to have school security, SROs in the schools, but it's also very very expensive, right? Especially when we're pulling officers off patrol to put them into the schools. So just asking the state to really take a look at what is the best practice here, what does school security look like in 2023 moving forward, and can you help us with the funding of SROs or armed security officers? Because in this committee, I've learned that just about every municipality has a different model, and it's really fascinating. So a lot of them actually train their retired officers to be school resource officers, but they only have them on part-time. They don't call them a school resource officer, they call them something else. There's towns who have hybrid models depending on the age of the students, different ways that it's not as expensive a model. So you kind of wonder, what's the best approach, right? So Carrie said she's going to take a look at that for us. And maybe that just means having a study right now, right? Because we know that there are folks who just totally want to pull out SROs out of the school, and we don't ever want to see that happen. So we don't want to discourage the conversation, but we'd like to see what we can do. I did find out, we found out, we got an email that on the governor's proposed budget, he did include in one of the reimbursement sections to the municipalities the money that he didn't give us last year for our the car tax revenue. So as you know, he promised to cut car taxes and then to reimburse municipalities for their revenue loss. We never received our $130,000, so we actually had to budget differently to make up for that gap. He did include it in this year's budget, so hopefully that gets passed as presented. But I am concerned about, there's a lot of discussion to cut the car tax. And there's not much there in terms of replacing that revenue stream. So I think we have to be very cognizant of that potential issue for us because it seems to be gaining a lot of momentum. I know that there's a senator in Glastonbury who came up with something relatively creative in terms of replacing those revenue streams that does not rely on the state reimbursing us. So we'll see. I mean, I think we could all get behind something like that. because we want the taxpayers to not feel that pinch of extra taxes, but at the same time, we can never just lose property taxes. It's a very, very large percentage of our revenue, and that would be harmful. So something to be cognizant about. And also, CROG is doing a waste management study to develop short-term and long-term solutions for the region, because there are municipalities like us who are struggling to figure out what do we do now that Mirror is closed. And then finally, there are a lot of recommendations from CROG and CCM, and they actually found a bill out there that is asking lawmakers to fully fund pilot. Right? You think there wouldn't need to be a bill to fully fund the obligations that they're legally required to fulfill, but believe it or not, if the state would just fully fund these programs, we could reduce our mill rate by as much as 3/4 to 1 full mill. So that's a really important, bill to get behind if you see that out there. And I think that I had a letter here. I was going to send it around to you guys telling the governor we wanted our money back, but it looks like we might get our money back. So I pulled that off the agenda. And Ray thought it was a little, it wasn't so nice. So, and I think that's it. Let me just check real quick. Nope, that's it. Okay, thank you. I will turn it over to you.
Town manager's report, mine's a bit more mundane, a little shorter also than the mayor's report. You have my memo in your package, but I did talk about the deep grant update already. Going to item number 2, NAGE Local 288 is no longer representing membership. There is a new union. Votes took place on the 14th of February. The Union of Operating Engineers Local 30 will now be representing former NAGE Local 288 employees, members. That's important because we have some negotiations coming up. Their contract deadline is coming up, so we'll be negotiating their contract in the near future. The affordable housing project, referred to as the Vessel project on Main Street, that was denied by the Wetland Commission, or by the Open Space and Conservation Commission for their wetland permit, and also denied without prejudice by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So they have a number of options, really maybe 2 or possibly 3. One is to appeal both decisions. The other is to come back to the Planning and Zoning Commission with a different plan. They left that door open, denying it without prejudice. I'm not sure about what they can do for the Inland Wetlands Commission denial. They may just have to appeal that decision in court, or maybe they can, through the court system, come up with an alternative. I'm not sure about that. Wetland commissions are, they're more black or white. It's pretty clear cut. Moving down to traffic, I'm having our Director of Community Development Services and our Superintendent of Highways take a look at Dividend Road and Hayes Road. We've had complaints with traffic and stop signs and what have you on both roads for a while now, and no Dividend Road for at least 2 years. So I'm having them look at the feasibility of installing crosswalk signage, stop signs, and possibly some traffic calming devices or mechanisms in both Dividend Road and Hayes Road. Traffic calming is, they could be speed bumps, which we're not recommending. They could be dips, which we're not recommending. It could be just different types of pavement or realignment slightly with the curbing. So they'll be looking at that. It's a low-cost alternative. And there is a grant called RAISE, R-A-I-S-E. I do not know what that means. It's a federal grant. Weathersfield had initiated the application for a planning grant. They asked if we would like to partner on the grant. It's a planning grant for pedestrian and traffic safety improvements, walkability, possible traffic calming mechanisms along the Silestine Highway corridor from Parsonage north into Weathersfield under the I-91 bridge, which is vital, particularly if that apartment building behind Wendy's gets approved. There'll be more people. There are a lot of services on that roadway. So CROG, I think, thinks it's a pretty good project. It's regional in size, municipal partnership. I'm not sure how much the planning grant will cost, but preliminary estimates indicate that the match for Rocky Hill would be about $25,000 and be higher for Weathersfield because they'll be doing more things than we will. They have a longer stretch. So I believe the deadline is Friday, and we have our grants consultant working on that now with Weathersfield and our community development director.
So the benefit to that potentially is that if you have this regionalized project and the plans are ready to go, you can then go to IIJA money, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Then you go to the capital construction grant.
And may I ask you a question about the roads? With Straska Farm eventually becoming busy, has there ever been any discussion about putting a left turn arrow at the intersection of New Britain Avenue, traveling north and turning left onto New Road? Because New Road there's a lot of traffic on that road, and that kind of circles New Britain Avenue, and New Road circles the farm. And I think we had an entrance there. But if you ever, because I drive that all the time, you can be the first car at that red light, and it could cycle 2 times before you can actually turn left. And I'm just wondering if there's ever been discussion. If not, we should probably look into that, because once we add more traffic there, I think it will be a problem.
Yeah, I'm not aware of it, but I'll ask Steve
Okay.
to see if there has
Thank you.
been any work.
60 is a state road. We would have to get the state involved.
Yeah.
And there's also the problem, 'cause I live there too, the light flashing at 10 o'clock at night is ridiculous. It's way too early. It's dangerous if you're coming up New Road and you want to cross New Britain Avenue to get up, or vice versa. It's very dangerous. And it's way too early because people are out and about at 10 o'clock at night.
Where is it flashing?
Where is it
Trinity
flashing?
Ridge and New Britain Avenue, it goes flashing at 10:01.
Wow.
So just while we're on that subject.
Yeah, no,
but
yeah.
I think we'd have to deal with the state, so because it's state road.
Definitely with the state, and may even have to do a widening if they can't get a left turn lane in. But we'll look at
And
it.
the Struska Farm moved its entrance down New Road so that it's not connected with the intersection.
Oh.
So it'll alleviate any type of backup of traffic trying to get on the corner and come in. So the entranceway has been moved down.
About 200 feet
200 feet, yeah.
further.
And no other, they're not using entrances and exits on New Britain Avenue, so,
And then,
except for farm use.
and then like on Dividend and Hayes Road, did you mention Hayes Road as part of the roads need? Okay.
Yes.
To put a stop sign, do you need DOT's permission?
No.
No.
No, we, on the local road, local traffic authority has the determination authority. And that would be the town manager is the local traffic authority. So I sent them out to look at it. And
Thank you. Okay. Okay.
We had so just while we're talking about the traffic calming, we had some concerns, I think it was maybe last year or maybe even the year before, about Bailey being used as a cut through. I don't know if there's any traffic calming. Yeah, well, we're thinking about those types of measures, if that's something to...
Of Parsonage, Chris, was?
Yes, yeah, people cutting through up to Elm Street.
That was Jillian.
Yeah, yep.
Houses near
Maybe
that
you should
corner.
add that to your list, because there was a lot of discussion about
a couple
widening it or doing something at that to slow down that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bailey Road.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe there was a recent complaint about speeding.
Yeah, I think
at that
we had the police put the thing that measures your speed, and we did a little bit of monitoring there, and maybe some for a little period of time. But if there's something we can do traffic calming, it's more permanent. That'd be positive.
Oh, and one thing, Ray, Representative Wood did tell us that every municipality is going to receive one of those signs, right, with the speed.
I think we get 2 or 1.
When we might be getting 2 of them, so it's going to be a couple of months, but
Those
but they're permanent and we can keep them.
The electronic speed.
Yeah, they're not movable, so.
Oh.
Yeah, so you put them someplace and,
install 'em.
yeah, so it's a calming device.
We'll get to see how Parks and Rec decorates them for the holidays.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.